Steelers Nation, stop everything you're doing right now because what I'm about to tell you could completely reshape how this franchise looks heading into the 2026 season. We're talking potential blockbuster cuts, salary cap wizardry, quarterback controversy, and a whole lot of drama that Pittsburgh fans need to be ready for. If you're not subscribed to this channel yet, now is the time. Hit that subscribe button, smash the notification bell, because we are breaking down Steelers news every single day, and trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. All right, let's dive straight into it. The Pittsburgh Steelers are staring down one of the most consequential offseasons in recent memory, and I'm not just saying that for dramatic effect. This is real. The decisions made over the next few months will determine whether this team is a legitimate Super Bowl contender or whether they're stuck in that frustrating middle ground of being good, but not great. You know the feeling. Making the playoffs, winning a game or two, and then watching someone else hoist the Lombardi Trophy while Pittsburgh fans are left wondering what could have been. But here's where things get interesting. According to the latest salary cap projections, the Steelers are currently sitting on approximately $66.7 million in available cap space heading into 2026. Now, that number already puts them in the top 10 across the entire National Football League, specifically 8th place. But wait, because it gets even better. The NFL salary cap is expected to increase by at least $22 million next season, which means that $66 million could potentially balloon even higher once all the accounting is done. Now, $66 million sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but let's be real here. In today's NFL, where quarterbacks are signing contracts worth over $50 million per year and elite pass rushers are commanding generational wealth, that cap space can evaporate faster than a lead against the Ravens in the fourth quarter. So what does General Manager Omar Khan do? How does Pittsburgh position itself to not only retain its core pieces, but also add the missing elements needed to finally get over that championship hump? The answer lies in making some incredibly tough roster decisions, and that's exactly what we're breaking down today. Let's start with a name that might shock some casual fans, but will have die-hard Steelers watchers nodding their heads in agreement. Jonnu Smith. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Jonnu Smith, the tight end they brought in with so much fanfare, the athletic freak who was supposed to revolutionize Arthur Smith's offense? Yes, that Jonnu Smith. And folks, I'm going to be completely honest with you here. This might be the easiest cut decision the Steelers make all offseason. Here's the reality that Pittsburgh needs to face. If the Steelers release Jonnu Smith before the 2026 season, they save approximately $7 million against the salary cap. $7 million, that's not pocket change. That's starter money. That's the kind of cash that can bring in a legitimate difference maker at another position of need. And when you look at what Jonnu Smith actually produced on the field last season, the decision becomes almost embarrassingly obvious. Get this, Jonnu Smith finished the 2025 season with a yards per route run average of 0.88. Now, if you're not familiar with that stat, let me put it into perspective for you. That number wasn't just bad, it wasn't just disappointing, it was historically, generationally, almost impossibly terrible. Among all tight ends in the NFL who ran at least 250 routes, Jonnu Smith's yards per route run was the absolute worst. And here's the kicker, it wasn't just the worst in 2025, it was the worst since 2019. 6 years. 6 entire NFL seasons. Nobody at the tight end position with that many routes run has been less productive as a receiving threat than Jonnu Smith was for Pittsburgh. And somehow, despite these numbers that would make a practice squad player blush, Jonnu Smith led all Steelers tight ends in offensive snaps. He played more than Pat Freiermuth, he played more than Darnell Washington, although to be fair, Washington was on pace to take over before his late season injury. But still, Arthur Smith's offense prioritized a player who was essentially invisible in the passing game. Defenders weren't even worried about him. He was getting blanketed on every route, providing zero separation, catching nothing of substance, and somehow still seeing the field more than anyone else at his position. And before anyone jumps in with the blocking argument, let me stop you right there. Jonnu Smith is not a dominant blocker. He's not a particularly crisp route runner. His hands have been inconsistent at best, and that explosive yards after catch ability that made him so intriguing coming out of Tennessee, it's simply not there anymore. The burst is gone. The big play potential has vanished. What you're left with is a $10 million cap hit for a player who doesn't move the needle in any meaningful way. This one is a no-brainer, Steelers fans. Cutting Jonnu Smith should be the first phone call Omar Khan makes when the offseason officially begins. Now let's move to a name that's going to tug at the heartstrings a little bit. Corey Trice Jr. This one hurts because Trice represents everything you want to root for. A 7th-round draft pick with legitimate NFL talent, long arms, excellent physicality, the kind of athletic profile that had scouts intrigued despite the obvious concerns. And those concerns, they were always about one thing, durability. Coming out of Purdue, everyone knew Corey Trice was an injury risk. The Steelers knew it when they drafted him. Omar Khan knew the gamble he was taking. In the seventh round, you're swinging for the fences on high upside players with red flags that scared other teams away. And on paper, Trice was exactly that kind of swing. If he could stay healthy, you might have a starting caliber cornerback on a rookie contract. If he couldn't, well, you only lost a seventh-round pick. Unfortunately, the injury concerns have become injury realities. Trice didn't play a single snap in his rookie season. He managed to get on the field for a handful of games in year two before another significant injury shut him down. And in 2025, not a single down, 0 snaps. 3 years in the NFL, and Corey Trice has barely seen the field due to a body that simply won't cooperate. Cutting Trice only saves about $1 million, which isn't a massive amount. And honestly, this decision could go either way. The Steelers might look at him and say, look, the talent is still there, the physical tools haven't disappeared. Why not bring him to training camp one more time and see if he can finally put it together? He's still on his rookie contract, so it's not like he's clogging up significant cap space. Give him one more shot, and if he gets hurt again, let him walk in free agency. But there's also a strong argument for just ripping the bandage off. At some point, you have to acknowledge that certain players simply cannot stay healthy at the professional level. The NFL is a brutal, violent sport, and some bodies just aren't built to withstand it week after week. After 3 consecutive seasons of significant injuries, is there any realistic expectation that year 4 will be different? Pittsburgh needs roster spots for players who can actually contribute. Sometimes the kindest thing for everyone involved is to move on. All right, now we're getting to the really controversial stuff. Patrick Queen. Oh boy, this one is going to divide Steelers Nation right down the middle. Let me lay out the facts before we get into the debate because this situation is genuinely complicated. Patrick Queen signed a massive free agent contract with Pittsburgh after earning All-Pro honors in Mike Macdonald's Baltimore Ravens defense. The expectations were enormous. Finally, the Steelers had a true sideline-to-sideline linebacker who could cover tight ends, stuff the run, and bring heat on blitzes. He was supposed to be the missing piece that elevated Pittsburgh's defense from good to elite, and then reality hit. According to Pro Football Focus, Patrick Queen graded out as a bottom 10 linebacker among NFL starters in overall performance, bottom 20 in run defense, bottom 5 in coverage, bottom 10 in missed tackle rate. For a player making elite money, those numbers are catastrophic. The one area where Queen still excelled was as a blitzer, where his downhill aggression and sideline-to-sideline speed still showed up, but you can't pay someone over $17 million just to rush the passer on occasional blitzes. If Pittsburgh cuts Patrick Queen, they save approximately $13.3 million against the cap. That's significant money. That's potentially a quality free agent at another position. That's draft capital flexibility. That's options that the Steelers desperately need. But here's where it gets complicated and why I actually lean toward keeping Queen for one more year. Pittsburgh's defense under Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin has been notoriously difficult for inside linebackers. The scheme puts them in incredibly tough positions, often in space against athletic tight ends and receiving backs. Patrick Queen himself was transparent about this last season when facing criticism. And the evidence supports his claims. Robert Spillane struggled in Pittsburgh, then left and became one of the better starting linebackers in football. Devin Bush was a first-round disaster in Pittsburgh, went to Cleveland, and suddenly looked like a competent NFL player again. There's a pattern here that can't be ignored. Now, with Patrick Graham coming in as the new defensive coordinator, there's hope that the scheme will be more linebacker-friendly. Graham's system could unlock the athleticism and playmaking ability that made Queen an all-pro in Baltimore. And here's the other thing. If you cut Queen, who exactly are you replacing him with? Peyton Wilson was benched for Malik Harrison last year. Harrison can't cover anyone in pass defense. The free agent market doesn't offer any clear upgrades, with guys like Devin Lloyd costing more than just keeping Queen, and players like Alex Anzalone getting up there in age. My recommendation, don't extend him. Don't give him any more guaranteed money. But let Patrick Queen play out the final year of his contract in Patrick Graham's defense. Draft a developmental linebacker in the middle rounds of this year's draft to learn behind him, and then reassess everything heading into 2027. It's the patient play, but sometimes patience pays off. Now we need to talk about the elephant in the room, the quarterback situation. And yes, this means discussing Mason Rudolph and what the future holds at the most important position in professional sports. Mason Rudolph's cap hit for 2026 is around $3 million, which would be saved entirely if Pittsburgh moves on. And let's be real about something. Mason Rudolph is not the long-term answer at quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a serviceable backup who can win you games if surrounded by elite talent, but he's not Nick Foles. He's not the guy who's going to come off the bench and lead a Super Bowl run if disaster strikes. So what's the plan? This is where things get really exciting, Steelers fans, because the vision emerging from Pittsburgh's front office is absolutely fascinating. The short-term answer appears to be Aaron Rodgers. Yes, that Aaron Rodgers, the future Hall of Famer, the guy who can still sling it with the best of them when healthy and motivated. Rodgers gives Pittsburgh an immediate Super Bowl window while simultaneously creating a development opportunity for younger quarterbacks behind him. And who might those younger quarterbacks be? Well, Will Howard is already on the roster, and reportedly Mike McCarthy is extremely high on him. Howard has legitimate starter traits, the absolute ceiling, something resembling Dak Prescott, A borderline top 10 quarterback if everything clicks perfectly. That's massive upside for a developmental player. But here's where the speculation gets wild. The Steelers could dive into the rehabilitation quarterback market, looking at talented arms who failed in their first NFL stops but might flourish with proper development. Anthony Richardson, Zach Wilson, Will Levis, Spencer Rattler, Trey Lance. These are all quarterbacks with significant physical talent who simply haven't put it together yet. Trey Lance in particular is fascinating because he was with Mike McCarthy in Dallas. McCarthy saw him up close, worked with him daily, and apparently liked what he saw. Lance is still incredibly young, possesses elite arm strength and mobility, and went third overall just a few years ago. If McCarthy believes he can unlock Lance's potential, signing him to a team-friendly deal as a backup makes a ton of sense. Imagine this quarterback room. Aaron Rodgers is the starter, one of the greatest ever, leading Pittsburgh's Super Bowl charge. Will Howard as the primary developmental backup, learning from a living legend. And Trey Lance as the wild card, the ridiculous physical talent who might just figure it out with the right coaching. That's an embarrassment of riches at the quarterback position. Finally, I need to address the Jalen Ramsey situation because there's massive confusion out there that needs clearing up. Some fans are looking at over the cap and seeing that Pittsburgh could save $19.5 million by cutting Ramsey with zero dead cap. And if that were true, cutting him would absolutely be on the table, but it's not true. Over the cap hasn't updated their numbers to reflect a contract restructure that the Steelers already executed. If you look at SpotTrack, which has the accurate information, you'll see that cutting Ramsey only saves about $2.6 million because of the $14.5 million in dead cap that restructure created. $2.6 million is not worth losing a player of Jalen Ramsey's caliber. Yes, he struggled at times last season, particularly when Pittsburgh asked him to play man-to-man coverage against elite number one receivers like Jamar Chase. But when deployed correctly as a nickel defender in zone match concepts, Ramsey's instincts, intelligence, and tackling ability still shine through. In Patrick Graham's defense, which loves 3 safety looks and big nickel packages, Ramsey could be extremely valuable. If the Steelers want to move on from Ramsey, a trade makes far more sense than a cut because of how the dead cap would transfer to the acquiring team. But honestly, I expect Ramsey to be back in Pittsburgh next season, playing a role that better suits his current skill set. So, there you have it, Steelers Nation. The 2026 offseason is shaping up to be absolutely massive. Jonnu Smith appears destined for release. Corey Trice's future hangs in the balance. Patrick Queen might get one more chance to prove himself in a new system. The quarterback room could look completely different with Aaron Rodgers potentially leading a fascinating mix of developmental talents, and Jalen Ramsey isn't going anywhere despite what some incorrect cap websites might suggest. This is the kind of offseason that can define a franchise for years to come. The moves Omar Khan makes over the next few months will determine whether Pittsburgh returns to championship glory or continues spinning its wheels in playoff purgatory. The black and gold faithful deserve better than mediocrity, and this offseason might finally be when the Steelers swing for the fences. If you're as hyped about this offseason as I am, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Drop a comment below telling me which move you're most excited about and which player you think will surprisingly not be on the roster next season. The conversation is just getting started, and I want to hear from all of you. Until next time, Steelers Nation, here we go.